The Teachings of Buddha. Solitude as your greatest friend. How to attain inner peace. Prologue. Redefining solitude. In the deep forest, a young man named Ken quietly walked, with only the sound of rustling leaves and the distant call of birds echoing around him. Inside, a question was rising. What is solitude? It was a question he had carried since childhood, a theme that never disappeared from his life. Ken had always feared solitude, believing that without friends or family, he would be consumed by loneliness. Yet, whenever he felt lonely, he also sensed that this feeling was perhaps pointing towards something significant. One day, Ken reached an old temple deep in the woods. At the entrance hung a sign reading, "Solitude is the greatest friend." That phrase stopped him in his tracks, and he asked himself, can solitude really be a friend? Chapter 1. A Conversation with Solitude. Inside the temple, Ken met a monk quietly meditating. He asked the monk, "What does it mean to make solitude your friend?" The monk smiled and replied, "Solitude is the time we have to face our true selves. When you no longer fear it, but embrace it, inner peace will come." Ken was surprised but didn't fully understand. For him, solitude symbolized anxiety, something to be avoided. He asked again, "How can I accept solitude and find peace?" The monk answered, "It's something you find over time, by introspection and deepening your dialogue with yourself. Solitude isn't just a temporary state, it's an essential part of life. Instead of fearing it, see it as an opportunity to learn." Chapter 2. The Practice of Solitude. Guided by the monk's words, Ken began training at the temple. He woke early in the mornings, practiced meditation, and spent his days calming his mind. At first, it felt painful, but over time, he noticed a change within. As he spent more time alone, Ken started facing his inner self. Memories of past experiences, failures, successes, and anxieties about the future surfaced. However, remembering the monk's teachings, he gradually learned to accept these thoughts. One day, Ken realized, solitude is time to reflect on oneself, and that time is essential for growth. With this insight, he deepened his practice even further. Chapter 3. The Power of Solitude. By accepting solitude, Ken began to feel a strength he had never known before. In the stillness, he found clarity about what truly mattered to him and what actions he needed to take. By facing himself, Ken no longer felt the need to rely on others. He began to recognize himself as an independent being, which brought him immense liberation. Solitude was no longer a fear, but rather a time for growth and a means to achieve inner peace. Chapter 4. The Coexistence of Solitude and Peace. Ken found new peace by embracing solitude. It was a peace that couldn't be shaken by external circumstances or people, and gave him the strength to remain grounded in any situation. One day, Ken told the master monk, "I used to fear solitude, but now I see that it's my greatest friend. In solitude, we can find our true selves and attain peace." The master monk smiled and said, "Exactly. Solitude is not something to run from. By accepting it and coexisting with it, we find true strength and peace." Epilogue. Living with solitude as a friend. Ken finished his training and returned to his hometown. In his eyes, the fear of loneliness was gone, replaced by a calm acceptance of himself. He spoke gently to those struggling with loneliness, saying, "Solitude is not something to fear. It's precious time to face ourselves." His words deeply resonated with many, gradually changing how people viewed solitude. No longer was it something to avoid, but instead it became seen as a friend for growth and inner peace. Next step: continuing the dialogue with solitude. Ken's journey seemed to have ended, but it was only just beginning. The lessons he learned continued to spread to those suffering from loneliness, and his journey goes on. The path of not fearing solitude but embracing it and discovering the true meaning of life is one that each of us must walk. Solitude is not our greatest enemy. Instead, it's the most trustworthy friend we have in discovering our true selves.